Assalamu alaikum sabko. It is my pleasure to welcome our viewers to our discussion on student visas. My name is Krish Das and I am the spokesperson for the US Consulate General here in Karachi, Pakistan. This recorded Facebook discussion is part of a series we are planning aimed at providing you with up-to-date information about current topics related to American higher education. Today, we will discuss international student visas. You will learn about the steps to take to get a student visa, from the forms you need to fill out and the things you need to keep in mind during the visa interview. Joining me in our chat are my colleagues from Consular Affairs, Bobby and Kim, and both are consular officers here at our consulate in Karachi. Let me start by asking the most basic question about the student visa process, and then we can go into the technical aspects of visa. So, Bobby and Kim, what is a visa?
Well, thanks, Krish. Thanks for having us. So a visa is a travel document that's issued by the United States, in this case, that allows a traveler to go to the port of entry where they have an interview with the Department of Homeland Security official to determine whether or not they can be admitted into the United States for the specific purpose of the visa.
I see. And the port of entry, the officer is called, it's Customs and Border Protection, correct?
Yes.
Excellent. And Kim, do you have anything more to add on that?
The U.S. issues many types of visas for travel.
Okay.
And so at the time of the interview, you'll need to know which type of visa is most appropriate for your purpose of travel.
Actually, it takes me to my second question. What types of visas do students actually need to go to the United States if someone wants to study?
So the vast majority of students will enter the U.S. on an F, a J, or an M category of visa.
The different categories of visas.
Different categories of visa.
But most of the students do enter on any particular category of visa?
Most students will enter on F1 visas. That's usually for a full-time course of study at the undergraduate or graduate level.
I see. Okay, that's good to know. Let's go to our next question. What does a student need to have in place before he or she applies for a visa?
That's a really great question. So students should have a couple things. They should have an I-20 provided by the school that they wish to attend. They should have a credible study plan to study at that university or college. And they should have their financing and the documents to prove that they have financing that can pay for their education.
And this I-20 that you're talking about is issued by the international programs at the university or college he or she is planning to attend, correct?
Exactly.
Okay, that's really good to know, because then, without that you cannot really attend. I mean, a visa cannot be issued to you. So you need all those documents, right, Kim?
Exactly. And usually if there are any questions about the I-20 or where it is or when it's coming, that's a question that the school can answer for you.
So the university can.
Exactly.
And normally universities are very sort of receptive to students, especially international students, as far as admission goes, correct?
Most schools actually have a department dedicated specifically to international students. So if you have questions about admissions requirements or academic questions, or if your I-20 has incorrect information listed on it, it's generally a good idea to contact the International Affairs or International Student Affairs Office at your university for follow-up questions.
And normally, I think my understanding is that the Office of International Affairs, they have someone called the International Student Advisor, who normally helps you with that particular process.
Exactly.
Okay, that's good to know. Is it difficult to apply for a visa? Because there's this perception about how difficult a student visa is. I mean, I don't know if you can answer this question. How difficult is it, and is the visa officer looking for, or what should the student do in terms of preparation?
Why don't you take this one?
So I think a lot of people like to think that it's more complicated than it actually is. If you show up to your interview and you're prepared with all the correct documentation and prepared to answer a few questions from the consular officer, you'll find that the process is actually quite simple.
I see. Anything else to add on that?
No, just it's really about you and your travel plan, your study plan. So you should make sure the student should make sure that they've really thought through what they're going to do, how they're going to finance their education, and have all their documents in order.
I see. And that leads me to my next question. When is the right time to apply for a visa? Is there a particular time of the year? I mean, is it during the fall or during the spring or summer? I mean, when is it?
So So the answer is as early as possible.
Okay.
Sometimes things happen and cases take a little bit longer than the normal processing time, so it's best to get your application in as early as possible.
Okay.
With that being said, students aren't eligible to apply until they have an I-20 issued by a university. So generally the process goes that you apply, and then if you're accepted to the university, then you get the I-20, and then once all of that has happened, then the student can apply for the visa.
I see. But also my understanding is that, sometimes the I-20 comes like 20 days before the school starts, or sometimes it comes, 3 months before. Now, so there's no sort of time frame that, they have to have a minimum number of days that they have to apply for a visa, is there?
There's not a minimum number of days beforehand, but you want to make sure that you've checked the interview schedule at the consulate or the embassy where you want to apply. There are different wait times in different missions around the world. So you might find that here in Karachi there's no wait time and you can get an interview the next day.
Okay.
You might find in Islamabad that there's actually a long wait time and it takes a week to get an interview or 2 weeks to get an interview. The busy season for student visas is normally over the summer. Students will receive admissions decisions April or maybe May, and then after that they'll have to wait for their I-20 to arrive. So we find in Karachi that most students apply for student visas for the fall, somewhere in the summer months, maybe June or July, which allows sufficient time for processing, time to get an interview if they need one, time for follow-up documentation to be submitted. So if they can give it maybe, a couple of months before they actually intend to start classes, that's best case scenario.
Which makes all the sense, and what you said earlier, that they should apply early, as early as possible.
As early as possible.
So the key is to apply early. Now, which leads me to my next question. What types of things that are the U.S. consular officers looking for in terms of proof that the applicant may come back to his or her home country? And this is a huge question, which we normally want answers for.
Absolutely. So applicants have to demonstrate that they have strong ties to their home country, that they intend to go complete their studies in the United States and then return to Pakistan afterwards. Students have to present a credible study plan. If you have a case where maybe the person is applying for a program that they're not qualified for, like a university degree that requires a high school education, but the applicant doesn't have a high school education, or a master's degree that requires a university level education, but the applicant doesn't have a university level education. That's the type of thing that the office might say, this doesn't seem like a credible student because they don't have the qualifications, they don't meet the qualifications for the program.
Getting the right documents in place and, applying to the...
And I think the most successful students have kind of a fluency and an understanding of how this degree and how this study plan fits into their long-term study goals or their long-term career plans that they have for themselves. Maybe they had a few different schools to choose from, and this school allowed them to specialize in a certain area of chemistry or finance that they're particularly interested in. So successful students will be able to discuss that interest, discuss that school choice, and how that makes sense for their long-term life goals.
How can a person prove that he or she can afford to attend a particular school in the United States? It comes back to the question of finances, basically.
Great question. Students do this in a number of different ways, and no one interview will look the same for every student. I think some students will have demonstrated on their I-20 that the school is providing them with scholarship or some other type of financial aid. Some students are paying for the full cost of tuition out of pocket, and maybe their family members are sponsoring them, and they'll be able to demonstrate in the interview what types of support they can expect from their family and what that looks like in the form of student loans, family loans, maybe savings. So you have a lot of different options for funding education, and you just need to be able to demonstrate during your interview which type of funding you plan to use for your degree.
And also, I think the I-20 is not issued by the university or college or the institution unless they demonstrate that they have the financial capacity to attend that particular school, correct?
I believe that's correct. The student still needs to demonstrate to the officer, however, that their financing is lined up. So, we might see an I-20 and it says that the student is going to pay a certain amount of money per year. The officer will still need to be able to verify that. So for many students, that's that they have a teaching position. If they're going for graduate school, they might have a teaching assistant position, and that will cover the full cost of their education. So that's a common one we see. Sometimes their family will be paying for it. Sometimes they have some sort of a merit-based scholarship.
And does the I-20 actually show that this person has got a fellowship
Exactly.
or a financial aid or a teaching assistantship or research assistantship, or is paying out of his or her own funds?
It
Exactly.
does. And
It does.
it's important to make sure you check the I-20 to make sure all the information is accurate.
I
Because
see.
it'll say on there how much is expected to come from the students themselves.
Okay. Now, the next question is basically, again, going back to the time factor, right? I was told, there's a question that keeps coming up, that my visa is an administrative processing. What does that mean? What exactly is administrative processing?
So typically we conduct an interview with an applicant. The decision, let's say the decision is that the applicant's going to be receiving the visa, then we just process the visa and return the passport to the applicant, and that's a pretty quick process.
Okay.
Sometimes, in a small subset of cases, a case requires additional paperwork or additional processing. So what we usually do is put the case on hold until that processing is complete. It's nothing to worry about. The officers usually will ask the applicant for some follow-up information,
Okay.
sometimes in the form of an email. And really at that point, the faster the applicant gets the information back to the officer, the faster the decision can be made.
I
So
see.
it really is key, going back to the earlier point about applying as early as possible, responding to those questions as early as possible will expedite it.
And while I think people will be eager to track the process, track the timeline of that processing. Checking in is a good idea, but it can actually speed up the process. So the visa can't be issued until the process is complete. So we always provide students with a way to contact us for
I see.
updates. But just know that the consular officers can't actually finally approve the visa until the process is complete.
Now, does the time factor also depend on the place that they're applying from? For example, is Islamabad, does it take longer than Karachi, or is it
No.
about the same?
It's about the same.
It's about the
the
same.
same.
Okay.
But it's important to apply early. Processing doesn't have any specific timeline, so it could be anywhere from a few weeks to a little bit longer.
Okay, so again, we come back to the same sort of question about, we apply on time, get your documents in order, get everything straightened out before you apply for, because that it makes it easier for the applicant to get everything processed
Exactly.
on time. Correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's a good idea, once you have your school choice selected and you've received your I-20, to just go ahead and make your appointment.
see.
Again, that is somewhere between maybe April and May, June. Once you realize, like, this is a school that I've chosen, I have all the documents I need to complete the interview, I would just go forward with making that.
And that would be for someone applying for the fall session.
Exactly.
August, September.
Exactly.
What about someone applying for the winter session or spring session? When does he or she, what would be a good, approximate time frame that they should be applying?
So there's no fixed time frame, but
Okay.
as soon as an applicant gets their I-20, really they should be applying for the visa as soon as they have the I-20.
I see.
So
Okay, that's good to know. Another question comes up that if someone has not yet received an I-20 or a DS-2019, should he or she be applying for a visa? But before that, let's go back, and if you can just, in a couple of minutes, if you can just sort of tell us what exactly is a DS-2019?
So the I-20 and the DS-2019 are both documents that a student can use to apply for a student
Okay.
visa. So the answer to the question is, unfortunately, students are not eligible to apply for student class visas without the proper documents.
Okay.
So they really do need that from the university first. However, they can go to the website, which is ustraveldocs.com/pk.
Okay.
And there's plenty of information there about the exact requirements for the different visa classes. And we do recommend that students check that website first before contacting or applying for a visa, because that website will have all the information that they
Okay.
need.
Could you please repeat the website again
Yeah,
for our viewers?
Yeah, it's ustraveldocs.com/pk, PK for Pakistan.
Okay. And also, I think there's another website that is part of through the State Department, the educationusa.state.gov, that I think talks about the application process for U.S. higher education. I think it goes into the universities you could apply to and the whole process of how to go through the application?
Yeah, they have really great information, general information for international students.
Okay.
The website we were talking about, the .pk website, is specifically for Pakistan.
I see. Okay, that's good to know.
And just to add, the reason why those documents are so important for us to conduct our interview is because they have so much information about your program of study and who is funding it. The university name will be on there, the start date will be on there, the cost of attendance will be on there, and those are documents that you'll take with you once you have your passport and visa together
Okay.
to the point of entry to present to the CBP officer who will be there at the border.
Okay, the Customs and Border Protection.
Custom and Border Protection,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah.
Now, I think this has been a tremendous chat, actually, or rather discussion session. Do you have any more, any other tips for prospective students? I mean, any advice or guidance that you could provide?
Yeah, just that we view the student exchange between the United States and Pakistan as a core part of the relationship between the two countries, and we encourage students to apply. And as always, just if a student comes and is honest with the officer, has their documents in order, that's the best way to pursue the visa.
And that's the key, absolutely. How about you, Kim? Any thoughts?
Just to not be nervous. It's supposed to be just a conversation about your travel plans. By the time the student reaches the consular officer, they've been in this process for many months, and I'm sure they've given a lot of time and thought and effort about what they want their future to look like. So generally speaking, the consular officer just wants to understand how they reached the decision to attend certain schools or certain programs and how they plan to pursue that program in the future. And so if they can talk about that credibly, they should be fine.
As you both of you rightly mentioned, it's basically students are student ambassadors. It's all about creating the mutual understanding between our two countries. Well, that brings us towards the end of our talk. This has been really, really enlightening. And thank you so much for your time, Bobby and Kim.
Thank you.
It's been truly a pleasure. And unfortunately, we're running out of time. And you can find more information about studying in the United States of America by visiting the Education USA website, which I spoke about earlier. That's educationusa.state.gov. And you can also find information on the 5 steps to study in the US of A through our Education USA website as well. Bye for now, shukriya, and Allah Hafiz.